Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another installment of Weaving Yesterdays, a history series put on by the Elkhorn Slough Reserve, where every first Saturday we share with you stories and landmarks from the Slough's past. My name is Rose, and I am an education assistant here at the Reserve, and today I am on Hummingbird Island to share with you the story of how construction of Moss Landing Harbor marked a new chapter in the habitats and human interactions within Elkhorn Slough. As I go along, feel free to drop any questions that you might have in the comment box below, and I will do my best to answer them at the end of this video. The Elkhorn Slough and surrounding watershed have seen many major changes throughout time, and the dredging and construction of Moss Landing Harbor is certainly no exception. This dramatic change brought about many lasting effects, both environmental and economic. Stepping back in time, hold on, let's see if I can turn this around. Stepping back in time to visualize what this body of water looked like before harbor construction might be a little bit tricky, but we're going to try. Today's Moss Landing Harbor looks a little bit like this, and used to be the northern stretch of the Salinas River where it intersected with Elkhorn Slough. If we went looking for their shared mouth to the ocean anytime before 1946, we would have to travel about a mile more north of where it currently sits. Let's go ahead and take a journey through time and space to check out what that might look like. On this map of early 1800s Elkhorn Slough, I have marked a few landmarks that you might recognize. And you can see here the northern mouth shared by the Salinas River and the Elkhorn Slough. And during the 1860s and 1870s, a steamship named the Salinas would navigate through that mouth to the north, up the Elkhorn Slough to Hudson's Landing, where it would pick up locally grown grain and other produce, and then return back to the ocean to ship these goods to farther away markets like San Francisco. Shipping fell out of favor when the railroad came to town, as transportation via train was faster and easier. Tide gates and bridges were built where ships used to travel. The shared mouth began to close more frequently, and while the river channel began to shoal. By the early 1900s, these changes made ship traffic into the slough difficult, if not impossible. A 1910 federal report even states that the Salinas River is shoaling up yearly. Elkhorn Slough runs back several miles, and years ago, a small steamer towed barges to Moss Landing on it. At present, there is not enough water for any navigation. Local residents had petitioned the federal government to build a harbor at Moss Landing as early as the 1800s. The government had surveyed the site at least twice, once in 1870 and again in 1909, but it decided against construction. However, by the early 1940s, both locals and the Army Corps of Engineers agreed that a harbor at Moss Landing was needed. In 1946, the channel was dredged by the Army Corps, and you can see an example of where the channel was. And it was initially stabilized with wooden jetties, but those jetties didn't last the first winter, and they were quickly replaced with the rock jetties that you can still see at the harbor today. Commercial fishing and canning boomed after the development of the harbor. Some 30 to 40 odd vessels, mostly purse seiners and trawlers, could be found docked in Moss Landing during the heyday. Today, the harbor is populated with more than just fishing boats. One can find research vessels used by Moss Landing Marine Laboratories and the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute for exploration of the famous submarine canyon in Monterey Bay, as well as a thriving ecotourism industry, including whale watching trips and guided kayaking tours. And I think you guys have been able to see some of the kayakers out enjoying the day today. Some people saw the harbor as a return to the good old days of shipping in the local sloughs. Others, however, saw it as a way to relieve wintertime flooding of moss landing homes and businesses that happened as the mouth shoaled in the early 1940s. As you can see from this photo, this helped mitigate a big problem that locals were having. Others, including the U.S. government, saw it as a way to promote fishing and food production in the Monterey Bay. However one looks at it, there is no doubt that opening the harbor mouth directly in line with Elkhorn Slough represented a big pendulum swing for the estuary. Elkhorn Slough had been tidal in the 1800s, but as farming created conditions that filled the lower Slough and lower Salinas River, the shared mouth became restricted and it closed more frequently, muting tidal influence. The harbor mouth returned tidal flow, but now the mouth is deeper, narrower, and in line with Elkhorn Slough. It creates strong flows of water. Fast water currents have led to the deepening and widening of Elkhorn Slough's main channel and tidal creeks. But today, Elkhorn Slough is home to an astonishing array of estuarian plants and animals that benefit from the tidal influence. Ongoing research and monitoring programs like those at the reserve help us protect and understand this ever-changing environment.